We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata here. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's my dog's birthday, gotcha day,
Oh,
whatever. Yeah. So I made a mistake. A little plate. His eyes always come out of his head when he sees it, basically, not fully. And then he eats that entire thing, and then still comes up to us and sits down and looks like we need to give him some food too, and then goes and eats his dinner. He's an 8 pound dude, but he can put away some food. So yeah, I'm doing great. Just spent a nice dinner with my dog.
we love that. Your dog, friend of the show, and
Wally, yeah.
we love to hear it. And you know what? It's been a busy, newsworthy few days for the Cincinnati Bengals, and during the off season, I can really enjoy that. We'll start with the biggest news: extension news. Ryan Rehkow, 2-year extension. Punters are people too. Not super surprised by this, but good for the Bengals to get him under contract for 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's the ERFA exclusive rights guy. They did this with Browning last year. I think this just basically comes free, essentially. It's like you could just
Easy.
do this. It's like an easy yeah, they're gonna do that. Keep him for 2 more years, exclusive rights tag, or exclusive rights deal. So good though. I mean, he's a good punter. He was a good punter all year. He tapered off a little bit towards the end, but was solidly in my guy Punalytics top five. I feel like through the first half of this season.
We love to see it. One extension down and a few more to go. Obviously, big news. James Rapine, shout out to him. Huge update on Monday when he said that he's expecting the Bengals to franchise tag Tee Higgins, but the club is working on a long-term extension and hope that happens. Um, were you surprised by this news? I feel like we've talked about it over the last few weeks where it's like you just can't let Tee Higgins walk. That was my biggest thing. You got to get something for him, either a tag and trade, which is still an option, or obviously another team can match. We'll get into all of that, what that means for this franchise tag. It's non exclusive like last season, and it's back to back years for T. Are you expecting this team? They'll have until July 15th to get an extension done. If they do tag him, are you expecting the extension done?
Um, Not surprised to hear they're working on an extension. I feel like I would be surprised if this was November and I was told this, but ever since he switched agents and Burrow has been so vocal about it, it just feels like the tide shifted and that they are actually working for it. And also guys that were supposed to be worth paying have kind of underperformed, but not that surprised that they're working on the extension. I I think they could get it done. I think that's more likely than the tag and trade at this point. If I was going to choose between those two, I don't think they can let him walk for nothing. So don't see that happening. But I think it could get done. I worry a little bit about how the Bengals negotiate things and how long they usually take to do these things down to the deadline to get this deal done. But I think if I had to guess, I think he gets extended. And that is not what I thought I would be saying a few months ago.
Yeah, I think everything really changed after that Dallas game for me personally. Obviously, we get the timeline of the agent change going to Jamar Chase. Good pick up from the media on that during the regular season. Joe Burrow continued to talk about it more and more and more. And then obviously during Radio Row Week a few weeks ago, he was telling everyone, like, yeah, we can make this work. We can make it happen. Obviously, we want Tee Higgins back. He is a need. He's said it several times this offseason. For me personally, yeah, I see the extension. It just feels different from last year's franchise tag. I think that they will. And look, watch us record this, and then the team announces that they're going to franchise tag him tomorrow with the hope to do an extension still. I think they're going to wait till the last minute to announce it. You have 2 more weeks from today as we're recording this on a Tuesday. So continue those negotiations with the agent. You're already talking to him anyways about Jamar Chase. Get T done. You're not paying anyone else. I know the national outlook on it is a little lopsided when they think of the Cincinnati Bengals in the cap space, because I've noticed where it went from, oh, they can't pay everyone, to now, why would they pay everyone? That's irresponsible. Well, Joe Burrow is really the only big contract on the books. If you look in the next few years, the draft picks haven't worked out, unfortunately, because you want to start hitting on the draft, and that's huge this offseason for them. Free agents haven't worked out. They're going to be cutting some fat on the roster this offseason, get even more money. They don't have to restructure Joe Burrow right now. They can get this done. Salary cap's only going to go up. In 2 years, these contracts are going to look like a steal. Maybe even a year from now could look like a steal for the three of them. So yes, the Cincinnati Bengals should pay their superstars. I saw something earlier today. You know, some teams, they are out there paying average people, or you look at this free agency market and it's not super great. But the Cincinnati Bengals have a problem where it's like superstars on their team, really elite, talented guys. Yes, you should pay your homegrown talent. Don't let them go to another team. And if you're Tee Higgins, yeah, he would get more in the open market. But at the same time, you got Joe Burrow. You're familiar with this offense, and you know this team could get back. So I think they'll wait till the last minute to label it the franchise tag, but they will have 4 months to get something done in between now and then. And I agree with you. They do kind of like to wait a little bit longer than we would like. I don't want any of this going into July. I'm still expecting Jamar to take a little bit longer, but get T done, get Trey done, get this stuff done before free agency. It's 3 weeks from now. You know where you're at. You'll still have money to spend in free agency, and you know what you're going to be paying Jamar Chase. So for me personally, it seemed like a positive update because I agree with you. A couple months ago, it said, no way, I don't think Tee Higgins is coming back. Now, as we got into the offseason, I'm like, yeah, there's a chance he could come back, but I just didn't want him to walk. I was so nervous about that because that still felt like a possibility.
Yeah. I Googled it for those wondering when you said this could go into July 15th, franchise tag deadline to extend, because I know it's different for those players than it is for guys on like the last year of their deal. I kind of expect it to bleed that far. Maybe not all the way up to the deadline, but I don't think, even though I have some optimism about him re-signing, I don't think it'll happen before the draft. I think they'll be working on it, but it's a stubborn front office. We know
is.
that. So I don't know if it'll be there, but this is exactly why you identify your core players early, extend them early, and then reap the benefits, because signing Tee Higgins 2 years ago would have been cheaper. It would have been cheaper than tagging him twice. Like tagging him twice is already like, you should have just extended the guy on the last year of his rookie deal. But we're past that. They should have extended Jamar Chase last year because it would have been cheaper than it will be this year, especially with the season he had. It's just, they don't do things like that. And that's frustrating. But it's better to get it done in general than it is to not get this done at all. So you have to give them some credit that they are now going to pay their high-end player.
Yeah. And I think, you can look at it like, yeah, it's been frustrating with the way the front office has operated. But look, if you get Tee Higgins done, you get Trey done, you get Jamar Chase done. Hey, I'll give the front office a little bit of credit for the situation that we're currently in. When it comes to T, when it comes to Jamar, it would have been nice to have those, done last season, the year before for Tee Higgins, but it didn't get done. So I'm living in the reality of where we're at right now for the Cincinnati Bengals in this offseason. And the thing is, they could pay all these guys and still have money. You don't have to restructure Joe Burrow. Maybe you look at the restructure down the line in 2026 and 27, but with the way the salary cap's going to go, you're going to have money. You can spend it. You're going to have to spend it if you want to keep up with these teams in the NFL and just this offseason alone. You want to hit on your draft. You only have 6 picks. That allows you to be a little more flexible when you think of the first round. This team can focus on defense. They can go corner. They can go defensive tackle. Really hoping they go defensive tackle, but we'll see what that looks like overall. You can go defense in the second round, because if you let Tee Higgins go, we've said it before on this podcast, you're going to have another need, because I just do not trust right now this wide receiver room. And it's not that Joe Burrow can't play with another wide receiver on this roster. It's don't let your talent walk out the door. Keep your talent. And I hope they do good by T. You don't want it to look like and I don't think it will. Maybe I'm a little too optimistic in giving this front office more credit than they deserve. I just feel like it's going to look a little different. Yes, in the open market, he could probably get 35 million. I know that sounds a little crazy, but if you look at the free agent wide receiver class, it isn't really that great. And Tee Higgins would be the best free agent possible available. And you just can't let that happen. You can't let it happen.
Yeah, when you're looking at the free agents out there, and especially the wide receivers, we talked about this too. Like the guys like Calvin Ridley see the ceiling of the market, and that was after an average year in Jacksonville. He went to Tennessee and got paid. When there's 31 other teams in the betting, it becomes you're not getting deals on these top
Mhm.
end guys. I think you end up bidding on them, and the price goes up and up, and you get to an uncomfortable stage of how much you would pay somebody. And that fits for Tee Higgins. It also fits for what probably Trey Smith is going to see this
Yeah.
offseason, where I think he's going to pass up Robert Hunt's $20 million per year from last year. He's a better player.
Mhm.
So I would expect it, unless his agent, doesn't do the best job, or maybe there's some underlying issue. But that's why you might see, and it also goes for like Milton Williams, for these guys who are just like, oh, that is like the clear top guy of his position in this free agency. There's 31 other teams, and maybe you knock out some of those, but you get to like, there are some desperate teams looking for help. And if that was Tee Higgins,
Mhm.
I mean, I think he would be the best player on the free agent market in general, better than Milton Williams or Trey Smith. I don't think he has the flaws that they do in his game. We talk about he could do everything, and I think those guys can do everything, but they have something they specialize in a little bit more. I this Tee Higgins would break the bank. So if you can keep him in house for less than that, you're getting a good deal. And yeah, it's like we mentioned, the salary cap goes up, and I remember they were arguing. There was a lot of arguments about paying Jesse Bates like $18 million a year at one point. And you think about that now, it's like that is like average player money. Maybe not
That
average,
sounds
but
great right now. Come on
that's
back,
like,
Jesse.
yeah, that's like for like a solid, pretty good starter. Now like best safety in the market is going to get over 20 plus 23, 24. I don't know. It just feels like people don't have the sight to see like, oh, this deal's going to be good, even
Mhm.
if right now you don't agree with it. Right now you go, Tee Higgins isn't a top 3 receiver in the league. Why would we pay him top 3 money? You're like,
Yeah.
well, because in 2 years that's going to be top 12 receiver money, and he is a top 12 guy. At least
Yeah.
I think so.
Next year we're gonna look at it and be like, oh my goodness. If T is on, he's here and he has a good season and he's healthy. Obviously, that's one of the big concerns with T Higgins. And one of the things I think a couple years ago, even last year, I'd be like, oh, the injury scared me a little bit. Hopefully he is healthy. That's all I really care about, and he gets paid because I am pro player getting paid. But if I were to ask you right now, Mike, we're recording it right now toward the middle of February. Report James Rapine, again, credit to him. Bengals are expected to franchise tag Tee Higgins with the hopes of working out a long term deal. Do you think, number one, A, the Bengals just franchise tag him and he plays on the franchise tag, which I do not think happens, but we'll just throw it out there. Two, Bengals work on a 3-year extension because you want to double dip and get paid again. Three, Bengals tag and trade, which meaning Tee Higgins would have to sign his franchise tag and then they can talk to other teams and tag him still. And they would pick up the franchise tag number and they can work out an extension. Four, the least likely to happen, team offers a certain number to Tee Higgins, give the Bengals a chance to match it. Bengals can't match it. Team gives the Cincinnati Bengals 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, I don't think that was happening because they wouldn't even do that for Lamar Jackson. Um, I mean, I think the most likely is he gets tagged and extended. I I
Yeah.
think that's where we are heading, and each week it seems more likely that they are going to find a way to work this out. It feels like T. Higgins has made some efforts to work back to them with the changing of
Yeah.
the agent. And it feels like they are making more efforts to work to him, whether that is because of Joe Burrow or just because they realize they don't really have anybody they can pay, and just trying to buy all the top free agents is kind of a fool's errand. Uh,
Mhm.
I think one way or another, we've gotten to the point where it is pretty likely that the Bengals will extend T. Higgins this offseason.
All right, so T is going to get done. I still hold out hope with Trey Hendrickson because I know the Bengals and the front office and his agents met last week, and we didn't hear any update from there. I feel like no news is kind of good news when it comes to Trey Hendrickson. No additional trade request this offseason so far. We'll see how those conversations go. And then obviously Jamar Chase, I just feel like that's a 99.9% chance of getting done. I really have no fear of it. My biggest fear is it goes into July and August and we're sitting at training camp again and he hasn't been paid. And that's just that you just don't want to do that. You have plenty of time to get all of that done. Jeremy Fowler, who I feel is a really reliable source when it comes to those Bengals news, or even Jamar Chase. He's really been on top of that over the last few years. He did send out a report last night that Cincinnati Bengals are working towards extending Trey, T, and Jamar Chase, those trio. And it doesn't sound crazy. This I think Joe Goodberry said it best, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit of what he said, but this should be the expectation. They're not pulling any magic out there. They're doing what they should be doing, and they can afford it. It's nothing crazy. They're not playing any cap craziness to make it all work. They can make it work. They have the money, and they should get it done. Do you have anything else to say when it comes to the players' extensions?
No, not only should be the expectation, we should expect them to do these things earlier, like we talked about. We should expect this team to, make a little bit more of an effort to compete right now. I think those are the frustrating things, like get these extensions done, sign a couple of free agents. Don't try to build the team through free agency. Just plug a couple holes in free agency, and then you're ready to compete. Keep the guys that you're supposed to keep. It just doesn't seem that hard, but teams have done an excellent job of convincing fans and media that they don't have money to extend these star players. They do. The Bengals certainly do, especially after they don't even restructure Burrow, but just make the cuts we expect them to make. I mean, they're going to have too much money to just extend these guys. Like, they have to go out there and probably buy some more free agents. So don't think this is like a Tee Higgins versus Will Fries or versus any of these like stopgap starters. Like, we could get 3 starters for that money. You can get 3 starters and Tee Higgins. You don't have to make this an or situation. So I think, yes, the expectation should be that they extend him. I think at this point, if you're not going to extend him, it's a bit of a failure because you should have traded him probably 2 years ago. At this point, where you would have gotten maximum value on this, because if you can't extend him, you can't let him walk for nothing. Now you're going to have to trade him on a $26 million cap hit. It becomes a little less friendly for the team taking it on.
Let me ask you this. It's outside of the 3 that we've talked about when it comes to extensions. And like I said, there's not a lot of big names on the books from now on. Honestly, it's really Joe Burrow if you look at the outlook of it. And we're going to be talking about the Orlando Brown Jr. extension soon, what that's going to look like over probably next season. Cam Taylor-Britt, it was obviously a bad year for him. Everybody knows it. This would have been that contract offseason, depending on how he really played this year, but they can wait. If you are the Cincinnati Bengals, do you try and get something done? Very low number. Or do you or is Cam Taylor-Britt saying, I'm betting on myself to get more money?
If I am Cam Taylor-Britt, I think I would bet on myself to have a better season and be able to go get more money. I think if I was the Bengals, I would probably make an offer. I would probably, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but if you could lowball him and he accepts it, sure. I do find it likely that, he could hit free agency. He's been a starter for a while. He could probably see like somewhere around the $10 million range, maybe a little less. But like a guy like Sean Murphy-Bunting just got $10 million a year. So it's not impossible for Cam Taylor-Britt to go do the same. And even though he had a down year and he got benched early on, he did kind of turn it around and didn't play like stellar, but was fine the back half of the season. So I think the Bengals should probably try to make that offer. And I also think Cam Taylor-Britt should probably decline that offer and bet on himself just a little bit, because if he has a good season, you're probably getting yourself up in that 12, 13, maybe even $14 million range. And you don't want to tie yourself down. He might look at the Trey Hendrickson thing. Trey Hendrickson signed that 1-year extension and he regrets it. And I don't think, if you're Cam Taylor-Britt, I think you don't want to do that. I think you don't want to sign that extension, ball out, and you're like, I'm stuck at this deal, especially because the Bengals are not going to go ahead and just offer me a pay increase. It's hard enough to get them to pay their contracts, and not pay their contract, but like extend players. So getting, just raises is another thing all entirely. So I think both ends, like, yeah, you should probably just offer him $5 million a year or something. It's like, yeah, take this. It's more money than you're currently making. If you want to secure this for yourself. And I think Cam Taylor should probably say, like, no, I'll bet on myself.
Yeah, no, and I don't blame them. I would definitely want to bet on myself after this year, and just kind of overall the big picture with it. I think what I'm going to find pretty telling, not only if they get the three of them done, kind of how the structure of the contracts work. Again, Trey has agreed to 2 contracts with the Bengals so far. He kind of gets it. He knows the layout. This number is going to be absolutely higher if they do extend him. Tee Higgins, what does that look like? What do the guarantees look like? Do they guarantee after, their first year? That feels like it's just been such an obstacle. Same thing for Jamar Chase. You're going to have to. You're going to have to. You don't really have a choice because you need to start playing like the big boys, the other owners, and get these things done. So we're recording this in February. Felt like that was absolutely huge news. Depending on, 2 weeks from now, we will have an answer. If the Bengals just say, hey, franchise tag for now, but we are working on it. That the agent, Tee Higgins, were well aware they were going to do that according to James Rapine's report. So obviously that communication is happening behind the scenes. They're familiar with this agent. We'll see what that looks like. The NFL Combine is next week. Like I said, free agency is 3 weeks away. So all the fun will begin there and other holes that the Cincinnati Bengals will try to fill up. Mike, you have plenty of content, I'm sure, coming up over on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. But any other players you're going to be looking at over the next week or so?
Yeah, I'm doing Walter Nolan right now. I think probably the second most popular pick for the Bengals from both fans and media. I feel like Xavier Watts was pretty popular. It does feel like he kind of hits that dead zone a little bit of between 17 and 49. But Walter Nolan, I think that's at the 17 pick that you make that decision. I don't think you expect him to get there at 49 unless his off-field stuff is serious, and then the Bengals might not be the team to bet on that. So that's the next one coming up. I think he's a good player. I think Ole Miss is a very frustrating watch for trying to evaluate because it's just not a lot of NFL stuff. It's a lot of slanting over. There's not a lot of asking the defensive line to beat the offensive lineman head up in front of them one-on-one in the run game or the pass game. It happens, but you end up having to watch like 5 games to get like 2 games worth of valuable reps from that defense because they just move around so much. And they have a lot of talent too around there. But I will say, I mean, Nolan is explosive. He's fun. He fits a lot of like what you would look at if you're looking at the Bengals and going, what are they missing? An explosive pass rushing interior piece. I think that is kind of how Nolan fits. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that feels like how Walter Nolan ends up being a lovely pick for the Bengals at 17 for fans and media.
Yeah, Daniel Jeremiah a couple weeks ago. I know he has a new mock draft out now, and he'll have those as we get closer, about 2.5 months away. He had Walter in his first mock draft connected to the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm starting to feel like, Mike, the closer we get to the draft, the more he might not be there at 17. But I'm really hoping. I want them to go defensive tackle. I know cornerback is still going to be on the board for them. Obviously, defensive focused if they make the moves that we're hoping they make in free agency and the extension of Tee Higgins, Trey, and Jamar Chase. I want that defensive tackle. I look at these other teams. You look at the Super Bowl. I feel like is an awesome example. You just need that. You need that on this roster, and this team is obviously missing that on the defensive side of the ball, and it'll help connect every other position group on the defensive side. So check that out, Bengals fans. A lot of good content. You have really great pieces from before. Plenty on our new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, and some of his Notre Dame players. So go check that out over on Cincinnati Bengals Talk as we get closer and closer to free agency, the franchise tag deadline. Make sure you follow Mike Bengals_Sands at X, and you can follow me at LNDS Patterson. We'll be back next week. Some Combine 101 and maybe some extension talk to be determined on if anything is in the books by then. Thank you for listening to It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.